So, I want to talk to you today about some victory thoughts. The question is, are you concerned about if 2020 will be a year of victory or defeat, or how it's going to turn out when it comes to living for the Lord and keeping right thoughts and actions? Well, in these thoughts, I want to tie it into a scenario that happened to me years ago. I was in another state, and I was driving along the road, and all of a sudden I realized I am lost. Okay? And it was not a good feeling, but I want to set this challenge up to you, tied into what happened with me that night. You know, if you've been defeated and you are in a place where last year was maybe not the year you wanted to have when it came to living above sexual temptation and living in victory, well, here's what's going to have to happen this year. The first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to realize that you're on the wrong road. Okay? Now, we don't win any trophies for admitting that we're lost, but we do need to come to the place where we have to say, you know what, I really am not on the road I need to be. Okay? We've got to admit we're lost. We've got to admit that we're going the wrong direction. And I know it's very hard for guys to do. You know, the old story about, you know, guys won't pull over and ask for help, no matter how lost they are. But when it comes to spiritual things, we're going to have to realize that the first thing God's going to want from me is I'm going to honestly and truly and deeply admit if I'm on the wrong road. I have to admit when I'm lost. I have to admit that I'm in the ditch or in a major rut. You know, the Bible says before honor is humility. And I'm going to have to admit it. Sometimes we will say to ourselves, well, I just got this little problem over here, or it's maybe a big problem, but at least it's only one problem and I'm doing okay in the rest of my life. But you know what? That's not humility. Humility is going to be willing to look at everything and say, you know, if it's not right, I got to humble myself and say, this is not the right road. Even if I'd like to think it's the right road, I'm going the wrong direction. You know, David said when he was confronted by Nathan about his sin, he said, I have sinned against the Lord. And that's what we've got to admit, that I really have sinned. And if there's sexual sin in your life, it's not just only against the Lord, it's also against other people. Maybe against your spouse, maybe against your family, or maybe your future family. And we have to admit we're lost. The second thing we have to do is we can't give up. Now, when I was lost those many years ago, the worst thing would have been for me to do is just to pull over and sulk and say, well, I'm lost and now I have no clue what to do and how I'm ever going to get home and this type of thing. We're going to have to admit we're lost, but then we just can't give up. You know, there's no reason for me to give up. God's got great plans for me. He's got great plans for you. And He's interested in us running the race that is set before us. He's interested in us taking the next step toward victory. He's the only one that can bring victory. But we've got to be running the race that is set before us, taking those steps, taking those strides in the right direction. So we can't give up. Even if we're on the wrong road, there's no use in that. And the third thing and last thing is this: we've got to turn around. Years ago, when I was driving and I realized I was lost, there was a panic. It was late at night. It was after midnight, as I remember, and I was way out in the middle of nowhere. And I started to think, "Oh my goodness, I have no idea where I'm at. I'm totally lost out here." But then it dawned on me that, you know what? I know I could just turn around and I can head back and point the car in the opposite direction of this road I'm on, and something's going to clear up. And sure enough, after a few minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, I started to see some lights that were indicating that the interstate was there. And you see these big green signs, and you kind of breathe a sigh of relief because you realize, you know what? I know now that I'm getting back on the road I need to be on. And so that's the third and last thing, is you need to turn the car around. You know, Isaiah 55:7 talks about, let the wicked man forsake his way and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto the Lord. The Lord will have mercy upon him, and to our God who will abundantly pardon. You know, you've got to return unto the Lord. If you've been involved in defeated and sexual behavior in the recent past, you've got to say, I'm on the wrong road, but I'm not going to give up. God hasn't given up on me, and I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to rely on myself. That's the thing that gets me all in trouble. But I'm not going to give up on the fact that God's got something for me and that He actually can do a miracle in my life and get me turned around in the direction I need to be. And then you just need to turn yourself around and go back in the direction that you came from. You know, what does that mean practically speaking? Is there some turning around that you need to do in some habits that you have in your life? Or maybe you've thought those habits were okay. You've said to yourself, well, they're not that bad. But you need to turn that car around. Those habits are leading in the wrong direction. Maybe you've gotten into some compromise this past year, and you've bought into some things, literally, maybe bought some technology or obtained certain devices, and these things are actually hurting you now. And at the time you thought, well, this would be a good thing to have, but now the thing's actually damaging your soul. You got to turn yourself around. Most likely you're going to have to deal with the technology or that thing that's hurting you and say, I got to go back in the other direction. I got to get back to where I started, probably having to deal with that particular thing that is really being a matter of defeat to you. So we got to admit we're lost. If we're going to win the battles this year, we got to admit we're lost. We got to admit somehow we got off. If we're in the ditch, we got to say, I'm in the ditch. I mean, I got to let it weigh in on me that this is a problem. I can't keep going forward in this direction. But I can't just pull over and stop. I can't just give up and throw my hands up and say, I'm done. I'm never going to win. I'm never going to be able to defeat these things. No, you can win. The Lord can win. He's the battle winner. And if we bring Him into a situation, He's going to win. He's just waiting for us to bring Him in. So I can't quit. And then I got to turn the car around. I've got to turn back to where I came from. I've got to return unto the Lord, whatever it is He's speaking to me about. In whatever way I got off, I need to return unto the Lord. So these are helps for when you're on the wrong road. And I hope you'll think through those and let God apply one or more to your life. See you next time.